the former president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. Mr. President, thank you for joining us on the eve of this historic moment. In an American classroom today, a student who has no memory of the Berlin Wall falling is taught this, that it was the end of what Ronald Reagan called the evil empire, the collapse of communism, and a victory for freedom and democracy. 20 years later, sir, how do you see the lesson? How would you teach the moment of the wall falling?
Очень много произошло.
Well, a lot happened. A great deal happened 20 years ago. And during those 20 years, first of all, a very important event happened in the Soviet Union in 1989, and that was free elections. The first free elections in the history of Russia. For the first time, the voters could vote in a competitive elections in an open way. They elected the parliament of the state. And the parliamentary system was launched, as well as separation of powers, and that was a big breakthrough in the country's development. It was the creation of a new state, in effect. Glasnost, pluralism, political, economic pluralism, all of that was testimony that our country was moving along the path of democracy. At the same time, this affected, even though we did not interfere in other countries, but our process affected and influenced the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. And here, again, we did not interfere. The citizens of those countries decided what kind of a regime they wanted to have, who they wanted to be president, what kind of government. All of that was part of the Velvet revolutions. You call them Velvet and not Velvet revolutions, but it was profound change. And add to this the fact that we were at that time successfully improving relations with the United States. We signed a treaty that eliminated 2 classes of nuclear missiles. So all of that showed that important fundamental changes were underway.
Let me follow with this question. If you look at the early history, you see Gorbachev, Reagan, Thatcher, transformational figures in history. The United States has a new president now that the world is just getting to know in Barack Obama. Do you view him, sir, as a transformational figure in history?
Well, I do believe that the new president, Barack Obama, really is facing a very difficult challenge. He needs to give expression in his policies to the changes that are expected today. 3 years ago, I was giving a lecture in some place in Midwest of the United States, and there were more than 10,000 people in the audience. And one person, when they started asking questions, one person was particularly insistent, asking, what is my advice to Americans? He said, things are not going right in America. What's your advice? What should we do? I said, well, I don't think we should give advice to Americans because no one should impose one's views. It's for you Americans to decide what you need. And I said that soon you will have elections and you will decide. Nevertheless, he insisted, and then I said, I cannot give you a prescription, a recipe for change, but I believe, I said, that Americans need their own perestroika. And the 12,000 persons who were in that arena rose and gave me an ovation. And I said to my interpreter, Pavel, who's still working with me, I said to him that, well, America is on the brink of big change. And therefore, yes, President Obama is a president of whom a lot is expected, a lot of change is expected. Had there not been this kind of hope, I don't think that he would have been elected. Yes, a lot is expected of him. The other candidates, the others were too much associated with the previous period, and people therefore did not trust them. I believe that the election campaign in the U.S. was unique. It was unprecedented. The whole world was watching, and a great deal became clear to everyone, including the Americans. And the fact that so many people voted, the turnout, which was unprecedented in many years, meant that people understood that a lot depended on their choice, and that's why they decided to take a stand. I learned today that Congress, the House of Representatives, has approved the reform of the healthcare system, and I'm glad that this happened. It means that he is leading and people are following, and a lot, of course, is still ahead of us. The Senate will consider this, but still, the fact that this process is underway on an issue on which President Clinton slipped and could not achieve it today, this is underway, and I think this is very important. So when I speak about Obama, well, of course, it's a big theme, and I want him to have enough strength for all of those reforms. I know from my own experience how difficult it is to conduct reforms in countries like Russia and America.
Mr. President, you made the historic decision to withdraw Soviet troops from Afghanistan. The President of the United States is now facing recommendations that he send maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 40,000 more American troops to Afghanistan. Should he send more troops, or should he get out?
Я думаю, что надо не дополнительные войска.
I think that what's needed is not additional forces. This is something we discussed too years ago, but we decided not to do it. And I think that our experience deserves attention. We decided to emphasize the domestic developments in Afghanistan, national reconciliation. We gave a chance to return, to participate in the country's affairs, the various clans that affected the situation. We addressed also this issue through an international conference, and we were in consultation with Americans, with the Iranians, with Pakistan, and with India. And I think that such an issue should be addressed in this way. Of course, when we are facing a dangerous concentration of terrorism, and we see that in this situation, certainly terrorists must be defeated, but the overall emphasis must be on dialogue, on the revival of Iraq, probably Afghanistan, of the long-suffering people of that country. Yes, a withdrawal from Afghanistan should be the goal.